Hello there, and welcome once again to the Set of the Verdict. Mick Cornett with Kent Myers. We're here every week meeting interesting people and dealing with topical issues. And today we're going to take a look at across the state of Oklahoma at Oklahoma Courthouse Legends.
Yes, and we're going to help your Christmas shopping, I suspect, because of this. We're going to be talking about a coffee table book that will be available for you to give to your person that you give coffee table books to for Christmas or anything else. We became aware of this book from the authors, the folks that put it together, and we're going to have them on today to talk about what's in the book. I think you're going to find it fascinating because not only is it a beautiful book with lovely pictures, but it's got some great, great stories about things that happened in Oklahoma courthouses starting at statehood and on up to today.
I bet it's fascinating. We'll be right back.
Natural gas is the gateway to a better world of energy. Instead of waiting, natural gas moves us forward now. Instead of finding ways to make dirty energy cleaner, natural gas simply is cleaner. We can use it to create our own energy, a wealth of new jobs, and keep more money here at home. Learn more at chk.com. Chesapeake, America's champion of natural gas.
Wilsey, Meyer, Eatman, Tate. We're accountants. We do taxes, business valuations, estate planning, and consulting. And we're right here in Oklahoma, working with the owners of small and medium-sized businesses. Steve Wilsey and Stuart Meyer have the resources and the experience. Wilsey, Meyer, Eatman, Tate in Oklahoma City and Tulsa.
There's no waiting at the St. Anthony ER.
No waiting.
Announcing the end of ER waiting at St. Anthony Hospital. Go to saintsok.com and reserve your time online.
Why didn't we think of that?
Welcome back to the Set of the Verdict. Mick Cornett with Kent Myers, and Kent's going to introduce today's guests.
Today we're really pleased to have two gentlemen to join us to talk about a fascinating book called Courthouse Legends of Oklahoma. On my right is Kent Frates, an attorney here in Oklahoma City. Kent did his undergraduate work at Stanford University, did his law work at the University of Arizona. He practiced law here, has practiced law, and is practicing law here in Oklahoma City since 1964. For 8 years, he served as a member of the Oklahoma House of Representatives. He is an award-winning and prolific writer and poet, as well as an outdoorsman and an athlete, and a longtime friend. Kent, thanks for joining us on the Verdict.
Thanks for having us.
Well, we're really glad to have you. On my left is David Fitzgerald. David is a photographer with McNeese Fitzgerald Photography. He has over 40 years experience as an international photographer. He has been inducted into the Oklahoma Journalism Hall of Fame. He has been inducted into the International Photography Hall of Fame. He has won numerous awards for his photography work around the country and internationally, and he has done the photography work on this book we're going to be talking about. And David, thanks for being with us on the Verdict.
It's a pleasure, thank you.
Well, it's our pleasure.
All right, whose idea was this?
Well, really the idea for the book was Carolyn Caudill, who's the county clerk of Oklahoma County. And she conceived of a book that would have a picture of every county courthouse, a photographic book, and she knew of David's prowess as a photographer, so she contacted him. And then David contacted me about writing the text for the book, and David and I consulted, and we decided that a book that just had pictures of courthouses and maybe dry facts wouldn't be much of a book. And so we decided that what we would do is create a book where there was an essay about each county, something unusual or unique to that county, a big murder trial, a crazy judge, an outlaw, some humorous event or something, and that David would not only photograph the courthouses, which he did, but that he would photograph events and places and things that related to the essays that I wrote. And
let's take
so
a look
that's
at the
the way
cover.
it materialized.
Okay, let's take a look at the cover of the book and what jumps out at you, Kent?
Well, you go ahead, Ken.
Yeah, that is the Carter County Courthouse
Okay.
in Ardmore, Oklahoma.
And David, did you choose this for the cover?
Yes, I did.
You had 77 choices. Why Carter County?
We had been up photographing Judge Walker and on a story
In Carter County.
in Carter County.
Yes.
And we came down the stairs and was going through the foyer there, and I looked up and saw this, and I told my assistant, this is the cover. It's just one of those things you look at and you say, hey, that's going to work on the
Well, that's a
book.
beautiful picture.
Well, thank you. It was interesting.
It's going to be time consuming for you, though, to go to all 77 of these courthouses.
It was a joy. Now we had to go to several of them several times, and interestingly enough, a lot of the courthouses face north, which to a photographer is disaster if you're photographing it in the wintertime. So we had to wait till some of these courthouses till the sun equinox came around into the northern hemisphere, so we could get the front side of the court.
Interesting.
Do they face north just by happenstance, or is there some reason that they
I
do
have no idea. You'd have to consult with the architect.
that? Well, Kent, how did you go about doing your research to find the interesting material for your essays?
Well, that's interesting. I started out by trying to do internet research and research at the Historical Society, and that did not prove very fruitful, frankly. And most of the stories in the book or the essays come from conversations with lawyers and judges or historians around the state. It turned out to be far more productive to call up people and just let them talk and talk.
Give me an example of someone you called in a story that they had.
Well, I used a lot of my contacts from when I was in the legislature. Don Davis, for instance, who's from Lawton, and David Stratton, who's from Clinton, were people that I knew. They're both lawyers. And I called my friend Bob Green, who was a judge in Pawhuska for years. And I called Freddie Betcher up in Ponca City. I couldn't even name them all now, but they were people that I had acquaintances with.
Give me an example of a story that turned into an essay.
Okay, one example would be that up in Guyman in 1970, they had a very well-known and very highly respected judge named Ogden, and he filed for re-election, and a lawyer filed against him who was not very well thought of in the legal community. And while the election was pending, Judge Ogden died, but it was too late to get another candidate on the ballot. So David Petty, who I know is an acquaintance of Kent's, who's a fine lawyer in Guyman there, he and some of the other members of the bar up there decided that they would campaign for the dead man. And so they campaigned for the dead judge against this other lawyer, and they put up signs, and they went out and campaigned for him, and the dead man won. He won by 90% of the vote. So I know you're in politics. You probably wouldn't want to get beat by a dead guy, you know?
That sounds like a David Petty. I do actually remember that because Petty talked to me about it when he was doing it. Well, David, when you go out to photograph a place like a courthouse, how do you schedule what you're going to do? How do you determine what you're going to do? And how do you know when you've got something that you're satisfied with?
Good question. First of all, we look at the courthouse, which is the best side of it. And I very seldom photograph anything between the hours of 10 and 2 o'clock. Most of the courthouses I photographed either in the early morning light or that late afternoon light that I think is so magical and has a warm color to it. But first of all, during that dead time, then we're scouting, or we're helping Kent. Maybe we're looking for other stories in that area. But we're scouting, and we'll find the best place to shoot it. If we're shooting inside, we ask their permission to go inside and scope out where we would like to set up the lights and the camera and so forth.
Well, in the 77 courthouses, is there any kind of striking similarity about them, or do they all seem to be organized about the same way, or are there some radical departures?
They're radical in that a lot of them, I think, as we discussed, some of them face north, some of them face south. Those that face south are kind of open to us year round because the sun's coming in on the southern exposure. But they don't all face the same way, and there are some architectural differences that I find really interesting, like the courthouse of Cordell, which is really a true jewel out there. The courthouse at Mangum I found really interesting, and the one at Hobart. Those were really interesting courthouses, and we had the opportunity to go scoping around those.
Yeah, we're going to get to see, not right now, but we're going to get to see in the next segment, the Mangum Courthouse.
Yeah, right. We'll talk about that.
We'll get to talk about that.
I might interject that there was a famous architect named Solomon Layton, and he was in Oklahoma City back in the 20s and 30s, and he actually designed the state capitol and the governor's mansion. He designed Owen Field.
Skirvin Hotel.
Skirvin Hotel, and he designed, I believe it's 18 or 19 courthouses in Oklahoma. A couple of them might have been torn down, and his designs were often unique. The one at Okemah, for instance, is unique. It kind of looks like a layered cake, for instance.
Ken Frates, David Fitzgerald have completed a book about Oklahoma courthouse legends. Kent and I'll be back and visit one more segment with these two gentlemen when we return.
I'm Mike Larson. I'm an artist, and I am Chickasaw. We were fortunate enough to start doing more and more work with the Chickasaws, largely because of Bill Attertubby. We developed, with his help and with his graces, a series of paintings on the Chickasaw elders. I would interview them, I would do sketches, we would talk about their history, some of it phenomenal, and then we would come away from that, go home, and I would do paintings. First thing I will look at when I look at a person is their eyes. You look at their eyes, you look at their hands, you can tell everything you need to about a person. These people portrayed to me strength and character, filled with an integrity and a joy of life. The wonderful thing about it, aside from the paintings, is the way that it brought me back into the Chickasaw family. It has made me more Chickasaw. It has made me more Chickasaw than I ever thought I could be.
The oil and natural gas industry help provide a revenue that feeds our schools, providing a better education for not only my kids, but for children all over the state.
It will allow the schools to buy better equipment. We'll be able to hire qualified teachers, and all around to have a better educational experience.
The future has never been brighter for our students here.
We should be very proud of the oil and gas industry in Oklahoma.
Welcome back to the Set of the Verdict. Mick Cornett with Kent Myers and our guests David Fitzgerald and Kent Frates. They've written a book about Oklahoma courthouse legends, and they brought some pictures with us that we're going to examine.
Yeah, let's look at the first picture, and you guys just take off on us, tell us what it is and what's interesting about it. Aha!
Well, now that's Dean Andy Coates, recently retired as the Dean of the Law School. He was Kent Myers' law partner at one time, I believe I'm saying correctly.
That's
he was
right.
also the mayor of Oklahoma City at one time.
That's right.
But he's in the book not for either one of those reasons. He was the district attorney of Oklahoma County who tried and convicted Roger Dale Stafford of the Sirloin Stockade murder.
And why is that such a famous courthouse story?
Well, it's famous for a lot of reasons. First of all, it was a sensational case. Secondly, it was somewhat hard to solve. And thirdly, he probably would not have won a conviction had the laws of evidence not been changed just shortly before the trial. And the laws of evidence in Oklahoma were changed where a wife could testify against a husband under certain limited circumstances. And the main witness in the case against Roger Dale Stafford was his wife, Verna Stafford. And had the law not been changed, her testimony might not have been admissible, and the guy who killed all these people, 8 people in cold blood and 3 others in another circumstance, might have gone free. So
let's take a look at another picture.
That's the Greer County Courthouse in Mangum.
That's
and
one of those you mentioned.
Yeah, that's one that I really liked. What the people don't know, and of course I hope they don't rush over there and try to go up there, on the 3rd floor, which has been condemned, is a territorial courtroom. It's all made out of mahogany, and it was incredible. And we went up there, my assistant complained because she was stepping on dead bats the whole time we were up there. But it was interesting to see all of the detail in the bench and where the jurors sat. And it was a beautiful spot.
What was the story about that? Do you recall, Kent?
We had a couple of stories in Greer County. One is just kind of a historical story that Greer County was part of several different countries in both Texas and Oklahoma. And there was a great dispute over where Greer County, which state it should be in. And the dispute was generally a surveying dispute over when they set the boundary between Mexico and the United States. Was it the North Canadian River or the South Canadian? Or it was the South Canadian, but it had 2 branches. And Greer County, which was over 1 million acres, fell between those 2 branches, and a big argument occurred, went all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court, and it ended up being in Oklahoma Territory and thus in the state of Oklahoma.
That's great. Let's take a look at another picture.
That's a picture taken in the old law library of Professor Whately and some students of hers down at OU Law School. And the story there was the Cleveland County story about Lois Sippuel Fisher, who was the first black law student, and she applied to try and get into the law school in the 1950s. They denied her entrance to the law school, and the courts ultimately forced her entry into the law school. And she was represented by Thurgood Marshall, who later, as you know, was a justice of the Supreme Court of the United States. And even after she was admitted to the law school, they discriminated against her by making her sit at a desk, and they had a rail in front of her that separated her from everyone else in the classroom, and she had to sit at separate tables in the cafeteria and use separate bathrooms. It was not a pleasant event in Oklahoma history, but she did get in and she did graduate and became very successful, was an administrator up at Langston University for some years.
And as a matter of fact, in the law school today, there's a beautiful portrait of her in her honor.
I believe that David Bourne, or wouldn't have been Bourne, it would have been a governor, but she was appointed to the Board of Regents at one time, which was, I guess, fitting justice.
Well, let's take a look at another picture.
That's C.D. Northcutt. Mr. Northcutt's somewhere around 90 years old, been practicing law for like 60 some odd years in Ponca City. And next to him sits a book that he wrote about E.W. Marland, who of course was the notorious governor and the guy that started Continental Oil Company, and has the Marland Mansion up in Ponca City. And the thing I'd mention about that is David went around the state. We found a lot of interesting lawyers that might not have anything directly to do with the story that we had in that county, but he photographed them anyway, and there's some great portraits in there of of notable lawyers around the state.
Well, you missed me somehow.
I might say about Mr. Northcutt, when we finished, and by the way, it was cold that day. When we finished, he looked at my assistant and I and said, well, I just want to say this. You two are the most level-headed artists I've ever met. and I said, well, thank you, sir, I guess. And,
CD has a way of understating things.
Yes, he does.
Well, Kent, I know you did some essays on some other interesting places that are in the book. Talk, for instance, about Choctaw County, if you would.
Choctaw County, the story was in 1941.
Well, excuse me, the county seat of Choctaw
Hugo.
County is Hugo,
Hugo,
southeast
that's
Oklahoma.
Right, southeast Oklahoma. In 1941, the first black lawyer that had ever appeared in that courthouse in that county appeared, and he was representing a black man who was charged with murdering 3 white people. And the case was even more sensational because the black defendant said that he had a confession beaten out of him with a blackjack while he was holding a metal pan with the victim's teeth and bones in it. And the black lawyer who defended him was Thurgood Marshall.
Wow.
And he was the NAACP brought him down here from New York, and he defended this gentleman who was charged, and he didn't get him off, but he did not get the death penalty, which of course probably was a victory in that case. And the case went all the way to the Supreme Court, and they threw out the conviction that he made, but they managed to have another conviction that he supposedly made when he was in McAllister, so they upheld the conviction.
Well, do you have any other projects on the griddle that you're working on, and something like this?
Not exactly like this. I just had a book come out that is totally unrelated. It's a hiking guide to all the trails in Oklahoma. Another guy and I hiked 60 trails, photographed and mapped them, and the OU Press brought that book out just recently. So.
David, you didn't do that hiking.
No.
Tell us what you're doing, David, on your photography work currently.
Well, after finishing this book, I got a contract to do the Choctaw Nation. And I got interested in the Native Americans and figured this was one of our resources here in this state, and they are. We recently finished a book on Cherokee art and artisans and sculpture called Building One Fire, and that has just come out. And we did 2 with the Chickasaw Nation. And so we're real excited about this Choctaw project.
So you're staying active.
I'm staying active.
We got about 30 seconds left. Would you rather take a picture of a person or a building?
A person, but it depends on the building, how historic it is.
Well, people can move, and buildings are probably going to stay there for you.
That's right, but they do change a little bit.
Speaking of buildings, where is your book available for purchase?
The best place to get it would be online, courthouselegends.com. You can also obtain it at Full Circle or Steve's in Tulsa and other places as well.
Well, I've seen, of course, we've all seen the cover. It's a beautiful book, and you guys are to be congratulated on contributing to Oklahoma history. This is a resource that I'm sure Bob Blackburn will be glad to have out at the Historical Society.
It is. It's a great book, fascinating story. Thank you both for coming on the show, and David, thanks for bringing in the pictures. Great work as always. And Kent, I think I want to see that trail book. And now that you brought it up, I have to bring that one out too. Thanks very much for coming on The Verdict.
Yeah, thanks to both of you.
And Kent and I'll have a final word right after this.
The good life comes naturally to Tulsa, where nature's beauty is matched with an eye for aesthetics. A legacy of neighborhoods graced with lawns and landscaping and handsome homes. a place that seems to have patented an ideal lifestyle. Bank First is loyal to the quality of life Tulsa assures its citizens, to the priority placed on education, culture, and growth. Loyal to builders who transform raw land into residential charm. Developers who see opportunity and add vitality to Tulsa's economy. Bank First serves both enterprise and private lives that need a loyal partner. It's how we help nurture this city's very good life. Bank First. Loyal to Oklahoma. Loyal to you.
The Journal-Record is pleased to be a sponsor of The Verdict. The Journal-Record, since 1903, the best source of Oklahoma business news and legal information. And for almost 30 years, Oklahoma political, government, and business leaders have turned to the McCarville Report for accurate, reliable, inside information. Visit the McCarville Report online.
Welcome back to the set of The Verdict. We're wrapping up a show with David Fitzgerald and Kent Frates and Oklahoma Courthouse Legends. What a fascinating group of stories they were able to tell.
Well, it really is. We just ran a quote just a minute ago that says a well-composed book is a magic carpet that can take you to a lot of places you wouldn't get otherwise. This book is a great example of a magic carpet that will take you to 77 different places in Oklahoma with an interesting story about each one. So pick it up. I think you'll find it fascinating.
A worthwhile book just for the stories, a worthwhile book just for the pictures, and a wonderful marriage. And I think it will be a great holiday gift for someone who's interested in Oklahoma
and
history.
we don't
or
get
law.
a commission on it.
Well, maybe we should.
Oh, well, we'll ask.
You can find out more about this book at courthouselegends.com. That's courthouselegends.com. That's one way to order the book. And we're also going to give you an opportunity to tell us about a show or a person you'd like to see interviewed on The Verdict. You do that by going to our website, theverdict.tv. That's theverdict.tv. Tell us about a guest you'd like to hear from or a topic you'd like to see discussed. That's going to do it for this show. For Kent Myers, I'm Mick Cornett. We're so glad you chose to spend this time with us, and we're glad you did. And be sure and check out our website down the line. For Kent, I'm Mick. We'll see you next week right here on The Verdict.
The preceding program was produced exclusively for the Cox Channel.